Edward Eds McCarthy, is the sort of the de facto head of what's left of the Dundon McCarthy organisation in Limerick. Although the McCarthys and the Dundons have kind of gone completely their separate ways, but he still was, part of that grouping and is the boss of bosses, really, of what's left, what remains of that. We know that he was sort of moved to Birmingham in recent years and is back in Limerick, but in Birmingham he was working alongside Thomas Bomber Kavanagh. But it looks like that's now going to come back to haunt him as such.
Well, I mean, we know so much about, I suppose, the machinations of Bomber Kavanagh's kind of network in the UK and other Irish criminals on the back of the EncroChat hacks and the information that, the UK police have extracted from the data they got from the French. And they've been, running a huge amount of investigations and cases under, isn't it, Operation Venetic? There's criminal gangs from all over the UK who are being rolled up and getting long sentences. And it's I think it's just the volume of work, I imagine, that they're taking their time getting to everyone involved. Like Bomber Kavanagh, as we know, is doing his 21 years for his 36 million euro drug smuggling operation
which was separate actually from the EncroChat hack. That was a surveillance-led operation between the Irish Gardaí and the NCA, the National Crime Agency. He's currently facing problems because of Encro, which is this gun plot we spoke about in previous episodes, which has also sort of drawn in Pater Keating, who's fighting extradition to the UK or attempting to sort of delay it on the same plot, which was to hand over guns to the authorities in order to get Bomber a lesser sentence for that earlier charge in relation to the drugs and money laundering.
That's not too complicated, is it?
I think that's very simply explained, because it's always all very complicated. I suppose really the umbrella on all this is the National Crime Agency have been going after the Bomber Kavanagh network in a way that we had never seen before. Kavanagh was living in the UK, based in Birmingham, and operating for at least 10 years before he first came into focus in 2015 of the National Crime Agency. They pursued him in the aftermath of that. I think around 2017, they raided his home and charged him and held him on charges relating to a pink stun gun that was found at the top of the kitchen cabinet. They looked a bit silly, certainly within underworld circles, for having got such a big gang boss on that. But all the while, in the background, they were really working to dismantle his empire. And of course, we're really seeing where they're going with that, the trial around the EncroChat. Information relating to this gun plot is happening in September. Liam Byrne, his brother-in-law, Thomas Bomber Kavanagh, and two others are up on trial. But Kavanagh's son, Jack Kavanagh, is fighting extradition from Spain, and Keating is still here in Ireland. We're going to get on to the update on that. But your latest story is that the same team in the National Crime Agency have now focused on Eds McCarthy and possibly his activities during a period of time when he was based in Birmingham and when he was building those links to Bomber Kavanagh.
Yeah, so certainly our information is that the NCA are pretty much have him in their sights, that they've been working on a case, and it suggested really now that it's really up to the Crown Prosecution Service on whether or not they're going to go after him. But I think the fact that it's suggested as well that they're actually preparing an extradition case means that they're pretty confident it's going to go ahead. So I mean, it'd be quite a development, I guess, if that happens. It certainly looks that way, that it will. Like he certainly won't be the first Limerick person who's being kind of caught, or not saying caught, but certainly accused as a result of information that that they've got through EncroChat. We did the story recently enough about Anthony Terry, who was this underworld transporter who was organising, drivers and trucks and, picking up cocaine that for, on behalf of criminal syndicates in Holland and driving it back to the UK into Northern Ireland, where he was himself caught with a consignment of cocaine. And we know that they were delivering to Limerick and they were delivering to the McCarthy Dundon gang, which we know, Eds McCarthy is the de facto leader. So, To some extent, I suppose it was probably inevitable that he would have been in their sights at some point if he's considered the head honcho. And I mean, you did the stories, was it back in 2018 or further back? When you mentioned that he was, that he was actually in Tamworth. He was in the same neck of the woods as Bomber Kavanagh.
And you could certainly see they were friendly and they were liaising. Absolutely. I was quite taken aback that McCarthy had moved from Limerick because, they have been based, the McCarthys have been based in Limerick for decades, and they were working with the Dundons throughout that sort of feuding period. They're cousins, I think, of the Dundons, the McCarthys. They'd share kind of, I suppose, a lineage, I think the same grandfather. I'm not sure exactly. And Eds McCarthy was a younger brother in that family, and he wasn't seen as the natural sort of heir to our boss. But I think because of a number of things, and certainly jailings of other members of the grouping, he ended up basically top dog, didn't he, of what was left of that grouping.
Yeah, and I suppose the fact that he made best use of whatever connections he had in the UK and, was able to I suppose, make friends with the right people, or certainly make the connections. Like he was, himself and his wife were the target of CAB, before he moved, and there was Rolexes and cars and stuff like that, and a certain amount of cash. So he moved to the UK, I suppose, to get out from under the spotlight a bit. And that's where we suspect that he continued to organise things from the UK away from the Criminal Assets Bureau, as did Bomber Kavanagh himself, essentially leave Ireland for the same reason, being targeted by CAB. So, I mean, as you said, it's coming back to bite him. If there's evidence, or if they can, produce a case based on the EncroChat hack to show that he's been involved in specific drug deals. And I think there is one particular one. There was a 1.6 million seizure, or was it even more than that suggested that may have been linked to that network, that it does look like they might have, a window of activity where they're able to say, this is so-and-so, this is someone else. I mean, we saw a bit of that in some of the other kind of EncroChat trials, and also in the arrest warrant recently that was issued for Patrick Keating, where some of the EncroChat messages were detailed in the warrant, and it's a matter of identifying the different handles, the different people, like he was a pony and so on. And there was all these, and that's the evidence that they have to back up, and that's kind of the starting point.
Isn't it amazing that we're sitting here and the National Crime Agency are the ones who are essentially pursuing criminals from this country on foot of the EncroChat information, and our own country has brought nobody before the courts with any evidence from it, yet we all got the same info?
I would imagine, and I'm sure, I don't know if you'd agree or not, but I imagine there was a reluctance in Ireland to use that evidence because they probably felt it would be open to challenge. And we do know it's being challenged in Germany, Holland and France itself as well in similar trials. In some cases, it hasn't worked. I think there's one in Germany that is still, it could be a big decision whether or not they'll be able to use that information there. But they have a far different expectation of privacy.
They do.
In Germany than we would here, that even criminals are entitled to privacy, I think, under German law. Whereas, here, once, the interests of justice are being served, you're entitled to get that information.
It's been challenged again and again in the UK, in the North, and it has not, worked.
Yeah.
Those challenges haven't worked. At this point, when we see these sort of big figures in organised crime in Ireland being sort of pursued by other authorities, could we suggest that we got it wrong? We made the wrong decision, that somebody somewhere in management of this information made the wrong decision to not use it, to not attempt to use it before the courts?
It's possible. It's hard to know, without knowing the information. Or, I mean, who's to say that there wasn't a mistake made in the way it was downloaded by the Irish system? Because it's only recently I learned that, that one of the English experts working for the NCA was developing his own software to extract the information needed for their cases. But then the French managed to develop, an application or whatever, the right kind of computer program before they had finished their work. So they were using theirs, but it's slow and it breaks down, but doesn't affect the information. So these are all potential, I suppose, points of failure in the chain of evidence. And, there's even some of the challenges and some of the reports of the court cases I've read in Europe would suggest that, there was questions about, were the servers legally seized in France, and, and there's all of this, and whether or not you'd be able to get that evidence even across the starting line in Ireland, it remains to be seen. And I'd say there would be, I imagine there was a natural reluctance to use it for all those reasons.
But there was if you recall, when it sort of blew that this hack had happened, what you saw was in all the countries, massive raids. That was the first thing that happened. So where they realised there was still drugs sitting, there was still money sitting, or they were going to catch somebody hands-on in a stash house or whatever. I mean, in the Netherlands, they found a torture chamber, raided it. So everyone moved together on the same day, and they came away with this treasure trove of money, weapons, drugs. We didn't do mass raids. We didn't publicise anything. There was press releases and press conferences all over Europe where other police agencies very proudly stated what they had done and what they had seized in that first day, and said that there was, hundreds of thousands more lines of inquiries and that they would be going onwards. In many cases, what I saw that happened, certainly in the UK, which is our, native speaking nearest country, many of the criminals that were caught up in the Encro hack were caught so bang to rights they just pleaded guilty because they were literally found with their hands on the goods, And then obviously there are some that they're purely using these messages that were taken, and they're the ones that are being challenged. But we seem to just disseminate the information, the intelligence, and keep it within one unit within the Garda Síochána Crime and Intelligence. And we didn't pass it on down the line. Now, I think things may have changed and we're currently re-looking at some of the information. But it's typically, because of the nature of it, you can get no answers, I mean, I think initially when journalists from here started making inquiries with the Garda Síochána, some were privately briefed and told that no Irish criminals used Encro phones, which obviously we can see
is not true.
Not true. And they were also told that, there's no way this would stand up in court. But, we're not that dissimilar to the UK court system. And it has stood up again and again there. So, but then, of course, because of the nature of it, because it's crime and security, you can get no answers. You can actually see no individuals, no human beings that made these decisions. And, anything you request from a press point of view is, you can't, because of the security of the state, they can't give you any information. So it's a bit of a win-win. But
in terms of intelligence organisations in Ireland, it really is just the guards.
It is.
I mean, there is a, the Defence Forces have an intelligence operation as well, but that's aimed at external threats to the state. They were never involved in gathering intelligence on the provisional IRA, which the guards were. Whereas if you have a terrorist organisation, you have state intelligence services that look after that in France, who are separate from the police, very separate intelligence services in the UK as well. So police intelligence just work on stuff they're going to act on. So they have a different mindset. Whereas the political policing in Ireland and the criminal policing are basically the same force. So it has to affect the thinking, possibly.
I don't know, was there time for that in a way? Because it was a unique thing that happened. As well. I think when you see Ireland as an outlier, no matter what the establishment or how the crime and security works in this country, we were an outlier. We're the only ones who made that decision out of all the other countries involved. And we saw other hacks, then the Sky ECC hack, and obviously there was the Australian stroke FBI hack. So we just have been completely unique to hold the information and not act on it. So it's just a bugbear of mine.
Maybe we're really cute about it, and
maybe
there's going to be something really interesting going to happen.
we know more than everybody else.
Yeah, let someone else lock them up, save us the trouble. Look,
correct.
Yeah, it's a bit.
Look, it is what it is. But as the time goes on, and we're seeing the likes of Eds McCarthy, that there's possibly an extradition case being built on him because of EncroChat material. One of the most significant criminals in Limerick. It's just, it's becoming all the more evident that Irish criminals were using Encro and that they were using it to do their business in the same way everybody else. I suppose before I keep banging on about that, we just get the final little bit of an update on Patrick Keating, because there was yet another hearing in relation to his extradition this week, which you attended.
Yes, and the short answer is adjourned again until the 18th of September, which we now know is going to be at least, 11 days after the start of the trial of Bomber Kavanagh and Liam Byrne over the conspiracy to pervert the course of justice and conspiracy to import weapons. So he's not going to be there for the start. And that was kind of the date that was suggested, that they were looking for clarification about, when is his trial date going to start? You can't have you can't just extradite somebody with nothing, on the horizon. And the authorities wrote back and said it was going to be the 2nd of September. It looks like it'll be the 9th from what we know from having been at the case management hearings already. And that, it'll start in the 2nd, but it'll be legal argument. There'll be nothing before a jury. So, I mean, it's kind of an unusual one in that we're in the vacation sittings in the High Court. So you've had 3 different judges. And there was pretty kind of heated, by professional lawyers, but by, the normally polite kind of standards of the High Court. It was a tetchy exchange between the 2 counsel, one representing Patrick Keating and the other on behalf of the state, the Minister for Justice, who's looking for the extradition of Keating to the UK, or temporary transfer, don't forget. And I suppose Keating's counsel, it was suggested that he was trying to relitigate all the arguments that have already been put before other judges who've made decisions. And again, it was a new judge hearing this. The judge herself kind of interrupted a couple of times and say, Keating's counsel was looking for a German, saying, why are you looking for a German? Exactly why? Confine yourself to that. I don't want to talk about stuff where a judgment has already been made. So there was quite a lot of back and forth like this, all through the morning. And the upshot was then, it's just back to the 18th of September, because
when the regular judges are back. And
basically his counsel wanted to get they wanted to get a hearing in a non-vacation list, so it would go before a judge who won't be relinquishing the case, who will continue to hear the arguments why he shouldn't be extradited, which is really has come down to clarity over whether or not when his trial will start. Now, despite the fact that, from the state's point of view, they're making the point that this has been clarified. We were given the 2nd of September. Yes, it would be likely that it would be adjourned to allow him time to get counsel, and that he would have to then, the trial would have to occur, or charges would have to be formally brought or arraigned within 185 days. But anyway, the point is, it's back to the 18th, so he's staying put here in Ireland for now. He's staying put in
prison.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, we'll keep an eye. It's going to keep going on. I think by the next time we're talking about this, hopefully I'll be covering the Old Bailey. Or
the Old Bailey on the 9th. No, I'll let you do it.
You and me. We'll flip a coin. How about that?
No, you can go.
Right, thanks, Eamon. I'm Nicola Tallant, and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.